So this little trick will enable you to shoot Instax Mini integral instant film in an RB67 Pro. So in this case, Pro-SD. So I'm using the Pro-SD back. If you're using a Pro back or Pro-S back, your measurements may vary a little bit. I don't know. I don't have one to test it with. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to make a little holder, a little carrier that will keep the Instax Mini film from sliding around inside the back. Now, I used a scrap piece of 4x5 film because it's got notches in it. It's also a little more rigid, less susceptible to tearing with what we're going to do. But for the purpose of this video, I made a little template out of cardstock just because it's easier to see the markings and everything than the film stock is. So the first thing you want to do is cut the backing material to fit the back. So I'm going to open the film back here. I'll take out the cassette. And essentially what you need to do is to have it fit in this space right here and not slide around. So it takes a little bit of trial and error, but basically it's going to sit right in here between these rails. I say that and then I get in there and can't get it out. But it needs to fit so it's not going to move around. So there, just like so. And then we're going to cut some little slits in it that will hold the Instax film in place. So what I did for mine was took the dark slide out to see where the film was going to need to sit. Put my little carrier in place like so, and then flipped it over, and on the back I just drew some markings with a Sharpie to show where the film was going to sit. The window for the film, rather. Oops. I think I had the back in there when I did this on my film. Okay, so that shows where the film needs to sit. Now, actually, what's interesting is the Instax film area, the image area, is pretty close to the size of the 6x7 negative. It should sit in there very nicely. You should get the full exposure of the image area on the Instax Mini film with your RB67 back. So, but what I found in doing that was that in order for this to sit properly in that window, the pod, chemical pod portion of the Instax film needs to be right up against the edge of your carrier. I found on the RB67 that the chemical pod edge needs to be right up against the edge of the carrier, like this. So with that in mind, and that reference there, I've got it centered left to right, and I'm just going to mark where I'm going to cut a few little slits to hold the bottom corners, like so. I just make some little marks here that I'll cut with an X-Acto, like that. Now again, I did this on film, piece of scrap film, because it's a little more durable, but you, for the sake of the video here, we'll do it on here. So, and then just make a little slit, like so. And this is going to be where the tab, the corners of the film are going to fit through and hold it in place. So, okay. And so ultimately, and you will do this, ultimately you'll load it up in the dark, it'll go like so. The little corners will fit like this. Again, this is why I did it on film, it's a little easier, but corners will go like that. And you may need to make a few little adjustments in the slits so that the top edge of the chemical pod edge of your Instax film sits flush with the top edge of your holder. But that's the basics of the holder. And actually, I'm going to do it on this side. I put some notches in the top right corner of my backing. So like 4x5 film, when you're loading a film holder, you put the notches of the film, it's pre-notched obviously, you put the notches in the upper right corner, and since you're doing this in the dark, having the notches there always in the upper right corner keeps you oriented as to, you know, where things are. With the Instax film, the exposure is actually made on the backside of the film. So ultimately, this is going to fit into your film carrier like so. So that the backside of the Instax film is open to the shutter. Okay. So for installing it on our little carrier then, it's going to go like this. And again, all this is done in the dark, so a changing bag or a dark room. So it has to go like so. You want to make some adjustments to that so that that's flush like that. And then in the dark room or the changing bag, obviously the dark slide will still be in place, like so. You'll flip this over like so, lay it in there so that it fits just perfectly, and then your cassette will fit back in like so. Close it up, again all in the dark. You're ready to shoot. Now to make this whole process work, you need two things. You need an Instax camera. This is an Instax Mini camera. There are a variety of models of these. You can get them for relatively cheap on eBay. But the main reason you need this is to be able to process the Instax Mini film. Instax Mini film is an integral film. It's got a chemical pod here on one end that when it feeds through the rollers on the camera, when it ejects, it squishes the pod and spreads the chemistry over the film. So the process is basically to remove, in the dark, a sheet of film from an Instax cassette. Remove it like so. Don't squish the pod. Okay. Again, all in the dark. This is going to go then into your pre-made carrier that we saw previously. Going to go like so. Tuck the corners in. And for the RB67, you'll want it to, again, align with the top edge of your carrier, like so. Okay. This will then go into your cassette holder, into your back. The cassette will go in on top of it. To feel your way. Close it up. Put it on the camera. Pull the dark slide, shoot, put the dark slide back in, take it off the camera. Now the process for developing this then is to remove from the back. Again, all in the dark. Doesn't matter if it falls off. You'll take the pod off your carrier, or the film off your carrier. And you need to have your Instax camera in your dark room or in your changing bag, because you're then going to open it up in the back, or in the dark. You're going to take the cassette out. It only fits one way in the camera. And you're going to feed your exposed film back into the cassette. Remember the pod, the chemical pod, goes in last. That's going to eject this way in the camera. So to feed it back in, there's a little plastic covering here over the end of the pod, or over the end of the cassette. It's open on one edge. You don't have to remove it, but if you kind of work a corner of the film, it's a little bit stiff, but if you kind of work that corner in like so, and then the film, you want it to be the topmost sheet of film here. So kind of press down whatever is in there so that it's always on the top. Press it in and make sure that it goes all the way in. You're not going to squish the pod. It's sometimes easier just to force it in like so. Kind of pull it with your fingers so that it sits all the way back into the cassette. And then this cassette will go back into the Instax camera. I can't open it because I have this thing loaded. but you'll open this up and this will fit back inside the camera. Now, once you've got it back in the camera, you'll fire up the camera, turn it on, cover the lens, and take an exposure. Press the button, and the film will feed out through the top, squishing the chemistry pod and spreading the chemistry over the film, and it will develop in a few minutes. All right, so we have the camera set up. We're going to try a shot with the Instax with my lovely model Cat. Hi, Cat. And so first we want to meter. I'm going to spot meter on Cat's face. I'm at ISO 800 and getting 3/50th at f8. So we're focused, we're good to go, and ready. Hold, 1, 2, 3. All right. And let's take it back into the changing tent and see how it worked. So we've made our exposure in the RB. I've loaded the exposed Instax Mini film in the changing tent back into the cassette in the Instax Mini camera. I've got it powered up. I'm going to cover the lens and I'm going to press the shutter button to take a picture, and it's going to eject the film, and that will compress the pod, spread the chemistry, and I'm just going to let it sit here and develop, and we'll see what happens. So I found that my first image was upside down with the thick part or the wide part of the border at the top of the image instead of at the bottom. So I made a new template, new holder, and the pods go in, or the film goes in like this, with the pod, chemical pod flush, or close to flush at the bottom of the image. So experiment with it, see which way is going to work best for you, but that gave me then an image that is right side up as far as Instax Mini is concerned, with the thick part of the border at the bottom.